I don't know if you've ever thought of life like this before. And 11:44 on the timer as I'm starting this video. Didn't even peep. But how I see it, we as beings, we live in these physical bodies, right? So we see things from our perspective. We see things from our own two eyes and from our own senses and stuff like that. So me personally right now, I have no clue what might be happening to somebody on Rosecrans in California. You know what I'm saying? I have no clue what might be happening over there. I'm not saying that there's specifically anything happening over there, but I have no clue of that because I'm living from my awareness in this body. But when it comes to the concept of God, and that God is that all awareness in the universe, and even if you don't want to put the term God on it, just all awareness, just awareness itself as it is. I believe that we as beings come from that exact space of all awareness and come down into these bodies from that space. And how I see it is like that space is dang near like a wormhole. How we get spat out into wherever we end up landing in this life. And that all awareness is infinite. You know how we say, there is no beginning or end to God. It's just everything. And that is infinity. So, there's no real true beginning to time. There's no true end to time because on the real, it's an impossibility that we exist. But at the same time, it is 100% possible and impossible to be impossible because of the fact that we exist. So, like I was saying, it's like we come from this wormhole, and at the end of the day, we are that wormhole. And somehow, we end up getting spat down into this reality, into these physical bodies, where we gain a sense of self. But it's just like, when you really look at it, just imagine you're a sense of self or a soul in that space of all awareness. You will look at this infinite pool of life because, like I said, there's no beginning, there's no end to it. We can't even comprehend the beginning of life. We can't comprehend the end of it because there's such a vast universe out there that seemingly stretches one infinitely. So if we were to look into this vast pool of infinity while being a soul in that space of all awareness, and let's just, like, I'm saying this in terms as if we have a sense of self while in that space of all awareness. So we look into this pool of infinite physical reality. And let's just say that this pool of infinite physical reality is a timeline. And as a matter of fact, an infinite number line. So even if we're anywhere in this space of all awareness, which at the end of the day, we're everywhere in that space of all awareness, because it's everything all at once, everywhere. So just imagine we're looking at this number line of infinity, and you decide to place your finger at any point on that number line. Because that number line stretches infinitely and has no beginning and no end, because that's what infinity is, where you're placing that finger on that number line, you have no clue what number value your finger is at, because it stretches on infinitely that way, and infinitely this way. So if you place your finger on it, there's absolutely no telling where your finger actually is and where that finger actually holds place on that number line. So when you think of it from that perspective, even if you are a soul, a specific soul with a sense of self in that space of all awareness consciousness, if you decide to jump into this pool of reality that we live in these physical bodies through, or that these physical bodies live through, how could you tell where you would end up, when you would end up, who you would end up, or how you would end up, and what situations you would be born into, or who you'd be born by, or anything like that? We would just end up wherever we end up without having a clue of where we would end up. Because when you add sense of self to the picture, you're adding shape. We only know a sense of self because of the fact that we live in these physical bodies. But if we were beyond these physical bodies and we lived as just purely within that space of all awareness, which is where our spirituality comes from, if we weren't in these bodies and we just lived from the space of all awareness, we would not really be able to have a sense of self. And like I said, sense of self is giving shape to consciousness. But in all awareness, there is no shape because it's everything. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you try to put a shape or put that in a box, it will break out of that box every time. If you try to like if you put awareness into a box, it will break out of that box every single time because it cannot fit within any restraints or limits, because it is infinity. There is no box that is infinite because a box has parameters. So it's like, and another funny thing, it's like when it comes to infinity, it's like you're looking at a little speck that is actually impossible to see, but it exists, but it's impossible to see because it's infinitely tiny. But at the same time, that exact speck is infinitely large and encompasses everything. But I'm getting a little bit off topic with that. That was just like a little thing that I've just low-key noticed or just thought about. But basically what I'm saying is, like, it would be impossible to say that you chose where you are. At the end of the day, God's in control of where we are placed when we come into this reality. Now, when we are physical beings, we get to have control over what we do with our lives. You know what I'm saying? We get to be able to walk around, talk and say what we want, and, you know, listen to the type of music we want to listen to, work how we want to work, and, you know, do what we see fit with our time. But when it comes to that space of all awareness, it's like, there's no shape, man. It's just awareness. And at the end of the day, we kind of just get put here, and wherever we get placed is where we placed. Yeah, just a little perspective of mine.